Welcome to Business Networking and Referrals. I'm Faithann Basore, and here we're making the invisible parts of networking visible. Things like conversations, body language, and connection, so you can build real relationships that lead to referrals. Let's get into today's episode. Today's episode is a solo episode, and we're going to talk about themes for the summer when it comes to delivering your elevator pitch at your networking meeting. Today, we're going to talk about a networking group's first impression. What is a networking group's first impression to those people who are coming in and are a little bit more on the shy side? And what are some easy tips and some easy things that the group as a whole can be aware of so that they can make sure that they are welcoming to visitors? And the reason we want to be welcoming is so that those visitors will come back. Now, this episode came about because I'm noticing more and more people are telling me experiences of networking groups they visited and how unpleasant the experience was. And inevitably, the end of the story is the same. And so I didn't go back. I got to thinking, I bet a lot of times what's happening is the groups themselves collectively are not cold and unfriendly people necessarily. I think what's happening is the groups are not being intentional enough about being friendly. They get very comfortable in their own relationships and they don't intentionally at every single meeting put things into place that ensure that people who visit for the first time feel welcome. I think that's the issue, which I guess in some way is good. We don't have a bunch of jerks among us. We're not all jerks. I think the challenge, though, is that there are some assumptions that get made once we get comfortable in our networking rooms and our buddies, those people we know so well, and we may forget how daunting it is for someone new to come in. And it's such a nervous system overload that it's not just like walking to anything else. There are some easy things that we can do as a group to just check and make sure that we are being welcoming. I've talked a lot about making sure visitors get a welcome from the entrance wherever they first come in to where the action is. And I've had podcast episodes around that. There needs to be people that are specifically designed to guide people from where they first see a person to where the action is. I call that the valley of the shadow of death. And they have to have a guide. They have to have somebody that gets them into the middle of the action effortlessly, seamlessly, so that their amygdalas, these scared people's amygdalas, that's the small organ in the brain that alerts us of danger. The amygdala of the scared networker settles down, and the prefrontal cortex, that's the area in the front of the brain that allows us to reason and think and be logical, so that prefrontal cortex engages quickly and the person finds themselves in the middle of the action and having a conversation, and now they can be a little bit more at ease. And we guide them by having people that are on the lookout for those new faces and start asking them questions and talking to them, and so they become engaged, so that they're not swimming around in their own fear with no one to talk to and no conversation readily available to them. I have talked about that a lot. Now, in this episode, I want to talk about beyond just that, beyond just getting them in the middle of the conversation. What can a group do collectively to make sure that they aren't the group that these new people leave and then tell other people, yeah, I tried. I went to this one group and they were so cold and they were so unfriendly. And I just didn't feel like I fit anywhere. So I didn't go back. You don't want that. If you are in leadership in a networking group, if you are very much invested in a networking group, then you want it to grow because you want those opportunities to grow. As people come in, they know people, opportunities can grow, and you don't want to leave that impression. And it's not necessarily because people are unfriendly. So I'm sure a group that has a committed core group of people that meet on a regular basis, they're not jerks. So for that group that's wanting to grow and is very, very comfortable with each other, you all aren't mean people. You are friendly and kind. You're committed because you're committed to each other. So I want to just give you some things to think about to make sure, like let's just do a quick audit and make sure that you're friendly so that you aren't the group that people don't want to revisit. Let's make sure that you've got a group that people want to return to and bring other people. So, some of these ideas have come from a recent friend that I talked to who had a really bad experience at a networking group. We're going to call him Steve. And I asked him, well, what could have the people there done to make you feel more comfortable? So, he gave me some great insight as to what would have made him feel more comfortable. He admitted that he felt very uneasy and then he didn't do his pitch very well. So a lot of these are going to be like from that perspective, these ideas that I'm going to give you are going to be from the perspective of someone who didn't have a good time and what would he have liked to have seen the people do better. Here is the first frustration that Steve and I talked about. He said, I felt like they were already so close. I felt like an outsider. This can be hard for people who are new if they feel like they're an outsider and they feel like the group itself is so tight and there's no way they can possibly get in. Here's a couple of things that you can think about. You want to make sure you're being the tour guide of every conversation. And I have talked about that before. The tour guide catches people up. This means that you're hyper aware as you're talking with the people that you know quite well of this ratio of how much of the conversations you're having are based on things that have already happened in the group with the people you know really well that may make those newcomers feel like they don't have enough context, enough experience to enjoy the conversations because they're heavily centered around things that already have happened that new people don't know about. So you've got to be the tour guide. You've got to catch them up. You've got to explain what's happening. And what Bob means when he says this is that sometimes we, after the meeting, we go to breakfast. And the restaurant that he's talking about, that's the place where we go after this meeting and we all have breakfast together or we all have lunch together. So make sure that you're catching people up and you're letting them know what you're talking about so that they can have equal footing in the conversation and they feel like they can contribute. Here's something else to be aware of. Some of us have these bigger personalities and bigger movements and louder movements. So if someone walks into a group and three or four of the people already there are talking and they're loud and big and boisterous because they're comfortable with each other and there's no problem there, they're used to that. You have that newcomer, you welcome them into the conversation, bring things down a little bit based on this newcomer's demeanor. If you see that they're shy and they're quiet, you need to match and mirror that. Tone it down. And that's one of the other things that Steve and I talked about. People being almost too much at first. Be paying careful attention to your body language, your voice, your movements up against the person you're talking to, especially if they're new. I often will get a little quieter when I'm talking to somebody new. I get a little smaller when I'm talking to somebody new and they don't look like they're very comfortable. I adjust to give them time to get used to us. So, as a group, collectively, are we doing that? Are you all doing that when you have these new nervous people? As these people are talking to other people, as this new person is making their way around the room, they should have a guide. They should have somebody that's already in the group and a solid member in the group should be guiding them around and talking and introducing them to people. A good idea is to get a little quieter, to get a little smaller when you see that the person doesn't look quite comfortable yet. Here's something else you can do. When Steve and I were talking about his pitch time, he said it was so hard to try and figure out how to say everything he wanted to say in the short amount of time that he had. Made him very nervous and his mind went completely blank. He didn't enjoy that experience. Now, I do acknowledge that we do have to have timekeeping. I recommend there be some way to keep time when we are all introducing ourselves, because otherwise you are going to have too many people will stand up and start talking and they haven't practiced and they don't realize time. They don't realize how long a minute actually is. And then you'll get people, even it only takes a few to go way past their time and now the whole meeting is going long. So I do recommend a timekeeper. And that's just something that, those new people, they'll have to adjust to it. But here's something you can do. This is what Steve said that he would have liked to have happened. You can come up to that person who struggled and just thank them for their profession. And I said, "Oh, that's a great idea." So when you hear that person, let's just say this person is a fence company. So they install fences. Well, if they don't do very well when they present their business for their pitch time, you could still come up to them afterwards and say, "I'm really glad you came and visited us today. Fences are so important. I have a dog and I am so glad that I've got a fence because my dog would be in Australia without a fence." So, even just something as simple as telling them how important and necessary their profession is still a way to let them know that you heard what they said. And without shaming them, let them have a little bit of a good feeling about that time, even if it didn't go well. This would be a nice way to make them feel a little bit better about that time. And it opens up this conversation. We start with, "You matter, your profession matters." And that is something that they struggle with, like Steve and I talked about. This feeling like if I don't do a great job when I introduce myself, then it translates to I'm not good at my job. That's what those newer people might be thinking. And we have to combat that a little bit by telling them that their job is important afterwards. It's a great way to say, essentially, to say, even though you weren't perfect, you didn't give us a tight, buttoned up pitch, we still are open to the fact that you probably are a really good company. Your worth as a fence contractor does not hinge on this 1 minute that we heard you talk about your company. That's a real struggle, I think, for people. They think everything hinges on this meeting. So if I don't make a first impression the very first time I walk into this room, then they're going to have no confidence in me that I can actually do what I say I do, which is not true. We often will give people a second chance. We'll give people a second impression. When we talk to them and they're friendly, we're not going to hold that pitch time against them and say, "Well, I will never call Bob because he didn't do a good pitch." They might be thinking that though. So coming up to them afterwards, asking them more questions about their company. My sales coach, Nikki Roush, who's been on the podcast twice, she talks about selective amnesia. And I think that would be a good concept here in this situation. You kind of just pretend like you don't even remember that they didn't do well. So all the focus is on, you're here with us. You could have been anywhere, but you came to visit us and you have a business that's important. And then make it personal by saying your business is really important and find something to say that relates it. "I'm glad that you are building fences because I know how important my fence is." And you can do that with any profession. And finally, I think this one is a tricky one too. It's easy to miss this one thing that you can do to kind of turn people off. It's not following up on messages you receive from people when they visit. So if a person comes to your networking group and visits, and then later they reach out to people in the group for an invitation to have coffee or something, and their messages aren't answered, it's going to be a huge turnoff. And the sad part is that it could be unintentional. It's missed emails, it's missed messages. You could have a great meeting and you could leave a great first impression to that newcomer for that hour and a half of the meeting, and it could all go out the window if that person, when they follow up a few days later or the next day, their emails don't get answered or their messages don't get answered. Now, all the work you've done to make that person feel welcome is null and void, because what it says is to that person, it says, oh, y'all are all about you guys. You guys are a group and y'all are tight knit and y'all are all about helping each other. But you're not about getting to know me. It's the opposite of what you want. It's the opposite of what a group wants. So answer messages. My rule is that everyone I meet at a networking meeting, if they reach out to me, they get a reply. They don't have to get the reply that they're wanting always. I mean, if they're emailing me so that they can pitch to me, they may not get that opportunity, but they're going to get an answer. They're going to get an answer. Even if what they send seems a little bit newslettery or sales pitchy, you can still hit reply and answer them. Especially though, if it's more of a personal message that person reaches out to you, you have to reply. Otherwise, the work you've done is just for nothing. Sometimes those people might send a message that's too vague, and we do have to go on a little scavenger hunt, which I don't recommend for new people. I mean, if you were a client of mine and you were new, I would advise you that when you do reach out to people that you meet at a networking meeting, you always tell them where you met them. Susie, it was good chatting with you last week at such and such restaurant through such and such organization. Let's not make other people go on scavenger hunts. From a perspective of an established group with members who are very close to each other, who aren't afraid, who go to the same meeting week after week or month after month, and they're getting an email from a visitor. If that visitor isn't really good at explaining where and when they met you, so you're like, I don't know who this person is, I don't know where I met this person, give them a little grace. They don't know any better, and reply and say, can you remind me where we met? Kind of teach them, before I can agree to anything with you, any further contact, I've got to know. I've got to have some context of who you are, where we met. But you can reply, can you remind me, thank you so much for reaching out. Would you be willing to remind me where we met? The big lesson here, though, is you've got to reply to messages from people you meet at networking meetings in some way. You've got to reply. You've got to stay on top of your email, on top of your Facebook messages. Wherever people can find you, you got to stay on top of those channels so that when you get messages coming in from people you meet at your networking meetings, they get a reply. So here's your quick recap for this episode. When you are part of an established group and you're very tight-knit with the people in your group, check and make sure that as a group, you want to make sure you're the tour guide, all of you together, as you're having your individual conversations with newcomers. You're the tour guide. So you're not spending a whole lot of time talking. If there's 3 of you, 2 of you know each other, that third person is the visitor. The visitor comes in. You're not spending a whole lot of time talking about something that the visitor has no understanding of. You catch them up and you talk about things that others can easily enjoy. They can contribute, things that are highly specific to past experiences in that group. That's not going to be a fun conversation for a new person. So even if you catch them up, if it's just something that requires a whole lot of catching up and a whole lot of like inside joke kind of things for them to even understand, talk about something else that the newcomers can participate in. They know people. There's opportunities there for you when these new people come. They know people, they have influence over people. And you want to make a good experience for them so that they want to come back and so that they can refer you as you build trust with them. Secondly, adjust your demeanor when you notice that the person seems shy and quiet and their movements are small. If you typically are big and loud, there's nothing wrong with that. And it's time to adjust all of that when you are noticing the demeanor of the new person and then make these adjustments. And as the person kind of navigates throughout the group, having these conversations, if the entire group is aware of this, just a slight change, that's going to be a great experience for that person because they're not going to encounter anybody that is too much for them. And it doesn't have to be all the time, but let's let them come in. Let's let them adjust. Let's let them ease into our meeting and let's be the lazy river that draws people close to us. One of the ways we do that is we match and mirror their demeanor. Next, let's talk to them after their pitch time and let's tell them how important their profession is and ask them about their business specifically. That will make them feel better if they stumble over their words during their pitch time. And finally, follow up on any messages, answer any messages you receive from those visitors. Even better, send them a message thanking them for attending your event. This is not reserved just for the leaders of the meeting. And I'm talking to myself here too. I'm talking to myself. I should be better at this. Visitors should receive some kind of message from me regularly. Thank you so much for coming to our meeting, Mary. The rest of the email or message is about, that particular experience. So if you didn't get a chance to talk to Mary, maybe the rest of the email is inviting Mary for coffee. Or if you did get to talk to Mary, maybe the rest of the email is recounting something that you guys specifically talked about and inviting them back. That's an easy invitation. They've come once, send them an email and ask them if they wouldn't like to come back again. When the person receives that email, it gives them a good feeling. It reinforces that it's not just the meeting that the people are nice, it's beyond the meeting. And when you reach out to the visitor, make sure that you're telling them who you are and where you met them so they don't have to go on a scavenger hunt in their mind to figure out who you are. For this episode, when you're a member of a tight networking group and you want to grow, I would love it if you would share this episode in your group's Facebook group or group me or whatever kind of group chat that you all have. If you have one, share this episode and just say something like, hey guys, I heard this episode about how a group should be making our visitors feel welcome. And I would love it if you'd listen to it just as a quick check to make sure that we are doing all that we can to make people want to come back. And let's just make sure we're doing everything we can to make those new people feel like they want to come back. They have opportunities, we have opportunities for them. And when we are networking, what we want to do is create opportunities for others that they wouldn't have except for us so that we can ask for the same opportunities when we need them. Go and network. I'm rooting for you.